Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Rotary this week. George Johnson has programs this month, and he's going to announce today's speaker.
Our speaker today is one of our members, Tony Orr. Tony is starting his third year as superintendent of Hamilton City Schools after spending 7 years as a superintendent at Springfield Northwestern in Springfield, Ohio. Tony has a great background in English and got his major in that undergraduate school. And he's going to tell us a little bit about what's going on in the Hamilton City Schools. Tony?
I want to commend Steve Colwell for miking me up because he knows I can't stand still. And he's also going to try to follow me with the camera today. So this should be exciting. I want to thank Mr. Johnson for the wonderful introduction. I also want to take a moment to acknowledge the true superintendent of Hamilton City Schools, my secretary, Terry Patterson. So what have we been doing for the last 2+ years since I've come here? That's always the question I kind of get as far as what's Hamilton City Schools, what progress have we made? Are we headed in the right direction? When I came here, the year before I came, what I would say as far as my assessment is our teachers, our administrators, everyone cares deeply about kids. That was the common goal, was to take care of them. However, within that common goal, it was kind of like the wild, wild west. Everybody kind of had a different approach to education. And since I've been here, what I've sought to do with 8 elementaries, 2 middle schools, a freshman building, and a high school with about 9,700 students is to seek a level of alignment. Because we have to have continuity as far as what we're doing educationally so that we can make a difference. It has changed significantly since I graduated from high school in 1985. Right now, there are 7 tests that students now have to take through the AIR assessment that will determine if they graduate or not. And I'm not a big proponent of state testing, but let's face it, that's the metric by which we're measured. So in 15-16, when I started, I knew we had to start taking some baby steps. One of the things that I looked at was I wanted to make sure we did what we call a lesson plan review. In other words, I needed to see what were our teachers teaching, how were they teaching it, and I was looking for key factors there. Lesson plans hadn't necessarily been reviewed, and that was one of the things that I needed to see. What was the plan? Writing across the curriculum. I'm an English teacher. I'm an English teacher that left the classroom and immediately became a middle school principal of over 900 kids. Writing and reading and writing are exceptionally important to me. I believe our kids today, if they can be outstanding readers and writers and mathematicians, they're going to excel. Certainly we need the soft skills as well, but those are things that are dear to me. Rigor in the classroom. It has to be tough. For kids to meet today's needs, it has to be tough. That means that we need to increase what our expectations are in the classroom. And as far as that goes with me, I don't care what the population demographic is, because we're all held to that same standard. I would like to say that life is easy. It's not. So we have to prepare our kids, and their grit, determination, and perseverance make a difference. And then the final thing that I did when I came to Hamilton after looking at this first year is I needed to see what accountability systems that I could put in place so that I could continue to measure our progress. And that came in the form of what I call a building principal report. What I require of the principals is every 2 months they have to submit to me a building principal report that outlines the growth of each and every student for each subject. Wow. Okay. Now then, it sounds almost like a business. And that's what school is. But guess what? We had to look in the mirror. Because after my first year, I love that picture, thank you. I was only allowed 1 bit of humor, I was told, so that was it. After my first year, at the very end of that first year, the students were going to take the new AIR assessments. These were the new tough state tests that our students were going to have to pass, or to take. And honestly, when I looked at the results, I knew that I had my work cut out for me, but what it at least did was that it gave us a baseline of data. And I'm going to talk to you about how I interpret that data, what it says to us and what it doesn't say. Gosh, I will tell you in 15-16, I'm not pleased with how we did. I will tell you that in third grade language arts, and you have sheets with you, in third grade language arts, only about 46% of our students were proficient or higher. Of course, 46%, remember, that's in one grade level, I'm going to have about 800 students. Fourth grade language arts, we were slightly higher at about 48. Fifth grade language arts, about the same. Sixth grade language arts, just above 40. And what I'm seeing here is I'm seeing 40s. Hopefully we get close to 50%. And that's the baseline that I was dealt. Now then, that allowed me to, it's almost surgical in nature. That allowed me to really look at where do we need to go from here? What do we need to focus on? Math, same thing. Math scores, horribly low. Not what I would expect at all. And you can see, again, those in your sheet. Social studies and science. You're going to see that in some cases we were hitting above the 60 percentile, but we were also hovering around the 40s, 50s. You're going to see that in biology. Now then, I will tell you that even in those scores that are lower than what I would want, the students that are in the 40s, 50s, and in some cases 60 percentile were receiving a fantastic education. They took advantage of the fantastic education that was available to them. I think there's some adage about leading a horse to water. But it was available to them, and they were excelling. But we have to talk about the elephant in the room. So I've been here now going on 3 years, and the question's been, is the leadership headed in the right direction? I've always loved Monday morning quarterbacking. I agree with George, thank heavens we played second half, because I was nervous. So are we headed in the right direction? Are we focused on the correct things in Hamilton City Schools? Can we as business owners really look at our business and make those tough decisions on, are we headed in the right direction and what are we doing about it? Are we going to have what I call crucial conversations? A wonderful book that I shared with my administrators about talking honestly with our staff. What are our priorities? The priorities the board gave me when I started here, and that was Larry Bowling, Glenn Stitzinger, Scott Kruger, Rob Weigel, and it was Steve Isgro. And they said, Tony, we want you to turn over every stone and improve student performance. That's all we want you to do, improve it. And that's what I do because I'm an academician. So that was the priority given to me, and that was the task that I took on. But then the problem is now you got to change. We have to change. The scores just showed all of us in this room that something had to give. Because it's great that 40, 50, 60% of the kids are receiving a fantastic education, but what about the rest? Progress is impossible without change, and those who cannot change their minds, cannot change anything, love George Bernard Shaw. And that's been one of the biggest challenges for me, because as a guy that brings his family into Hamilton, and we are, I don't know at what point in time you become Hamiltonian, but my daughter goes to Brookwood. I will tell you that when Piper started in third grade, she came from Lakota schools. She was behind in reading and math. And after 2 years, of course it's possible her dad's strict, but after 2 years in Hamilton schools, she is excelling. But I had to change minds in this district and also in our community. We had to take bigger steps. Again, we had to have the crucial conversations. To sit across from the table from someone that's been here as a teacher 10, 15, 20, 25 years, and to say, we have to do some things differently. How can we do these things differently together? Sometimes that's tough. Teacher evaluations versus student performance. I looked at those. I said, okay, let me look at your teacher evaluations and how do those compare with how your students did? I mean, again, it's a very business-oriented approach. And it's not that we don't love our teachers. We do. I can't accomplish anything we can't accomplish anything without our teachers. That is absolutely true. But I can't accomplish anything further than what we are unless unless everyone can align, get on the same page, and expect the standards that we should be. So in 16 and 17, I was able to take that goal and start aligning everyone. The 8 elementaries, the 2 middle schools, the freshman building, and the high school. So what did it result in with this alignment? And what did we align? Again, I expected all the things that I've mentioned. Some people were high-fiving me, Tony, we needed this. Others were like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe we have to do this. We had to have a district goal. We agreed we were going to focus on what we call performance index. Each student is given a level by the state of Ohio, and it'll either be limited, which is the very lowest, basic, proficient, and then we also have proficient, accelerated, and advanced. And these are weighted scores. Each one is assigned a score. For example, at limited, when I look at the state report card, they only get 0.3%. Basic 0.6, proficient is 1, accelerated 1.1, and the 1.2s are the ones, I would argue, from 1.0 all the way up to advanced. Those are the kids that are definitely right now college bound. But I had way too many at the limited and basic levels. So how do I move those up? How do we move those up? And that was our focal point. We had to identify who those students were and absolutely target them so we could figure out how to help them improve. So what did we do? We focused on an iReady program. iReady is a software package that allows ongoing what we call progress monitoring. I always needed to see where the students were growing and where they weren't, and then trying to figure out how to improve that education. Oftentimes when I'm interviewed, I always compare it to coach pitch baseball. And when my son, who's 21 and he's going to be a school teacher, when he was young, I had to do the coach pitch baseball thing. And it's funny, I was just sitting on the bleachers, and the coach that was up there, he was striking them all out, which is not the goal in coach pitch baseball, okay? So I was just sitting there, and I promised, and Bob Hancock's in the back, I promised I didn't say anything, Bob. But as I sat there, the coach said, Tony, do you want to take a shot at it? And I said, sure. So I would have I would have the players go up to the plate and swing their bat 4 or 5 times. And I didn't really pitch it like a pitcher. I threw it more like a dart. Where was I trying to throw it? I was trying to throw it at the bat. That was it. Although, and everybody hit wonderfully, except for my son. Certica. Certica is a program that has over 90,000 questions from the air assessment. Our teachers didn't have access to these things before, because it's one thing to be told, hey, you need to know reading, writing, and arithmetic. Those are so broad. The problem is, those of us that went to college, how many times were we getting ready to take it was almost time for a midterm, and there was always somebody, thankfully, that would raise his or her hand and say, so what's going to be on the exam? Because they gave us a huge book, and we didn't quite know what the focal point would be. Well, the same thing is true with state testing. It's one thing that we're teaching these broad-based content areas. It's another thing to know how they're going to ask the question, what they're going to ask, so that we have the proper format to meet their needs. We've been using student data, teacher data, everything. We sent our principals at the elementary level to The Ohio State University, and they finished both halves of their game. And at the Principals Academy, we had to focus on them being instructional leaders of these large buildings. And even though we receive our principals' licenses and all the things that go with it, the truth is, it's kind of a baptism by fire. And in saying that, you become principal and you're expected to know how to do all these things, when the reality is, having a license that says you can do the job and doing it are 2 different things. So we had to make sure that our principals were well trained. And that's exactly what we did. In fact, this year, the assistant principals are going. And then finally, we have a literacy program. Again, the 8 elementaries, great intentions, working hard, but we needed some alignment. So we are doing the literacy collaborative a program out of The Ohio State University that focuses on the 5 pillars of literacy. These are, I know this is educational jargon, but this is cool stuff. So you remember the scores that I wasn't pleased with after the end of my first year? By the second year, we've seen growth in 17 out of 23 areas, and in some cases by double digits. Now that doesn't mean we improved in all of them, because you need to know I continually pore over this data. Our team does. And we grew significantly in 3rd grade language arts. We grew significantly in 4th grade, and all the way down. The only anomaly that I see on there is 8th grade language arts. And I'm not going to use an excuse for it. We needed to do better. However, the only thing I will tell you is across the state, that's the performance that we saw. So either students suddenly got dumber, teachers quit teaching across the state, or there was a flaw with the state test. And I'm not going to tell you which one I think it is. Math performance, abysmal, that first year. Again, even though those students in those ranges are receiving an exceptional education, we have to do better because we have to meet the requirements of the entire population. And we did. We improved very well, but not where I want. Again, we still are behind, but we're doing better. But here's something that we recognized early, and the board, the current board, approved us for purchasing new math materials. We haven't had new math materials in over 15 years. Math instruction has changed in that time, but we improved significantly in some cases, and this year's going to be even better. Social studies and science. Again, scores not where I'd like them to be, but now they're getting better. And what I look for, just like as we develop our city, our community, I look for incremental improvements. Are we headed in the right direction? And everything that I'm seeing from the performance of our teachers, administrators, our district indicates that we are. How long is it going to take to get it to where we want it to be? I've already told the board I think it's a 5 to 7 year process. You can't just steer a ship in a pond and expect to turn it immediately. But we're going to get there, and this is what I'm going to be looking for each and every year, are these incremental improvements. Again, 3rd grade reading went up by 8.6. 5th grade reading went up by 9. 3rd grade math by 12.5%. 6th grade math improved by 9.3%, and algebra improved significantly at 11%. One of the things I did at the district-wide kickoff meeting, we had 1,400 people bus to Hamilton High, to Big Blue, and we celebrated our successes, something that we needed to have. And I told them at that meeting, I said, we sorely needed an academic win. Have to have it. Because we're working so hard, we have to have something. And we got it. Fairwood Elementary, in 3rd grade reading, improved by 23%. At Bridgeport Elementary, there are 11 tested areas at the elementaries. By the way, that's a lot of testing. But in 11 tested areas at the elementary, Bridgeport improved in 10 out of 11 tested areas. And by the way, if you're not excited by this, we need to check and see if you can fog up a mirror, because this is exciting stuff. Riverview and Linden. And if you look at different demographics, you'll understand how much I celebrate what they've accomplished. They improved in 9 out of 11. Highland, 8 out of 11. Crawford Woods, Ridgeway, Brookwood improved in 7 out of the 11. Freshman Building improved in all of their areas. The high school improved in 4 out of the 6 of their areas. But there's more that we're going to do because we have to. By 17 and 18, this year, I'm expecting full alignment. This is the 3-year plan, if you will. And we're headed there with everything we're doing, and we're adding things to it, though. We're fully implementing the iReady and the Certica. The assistant principals are now going to The Ohio State University for their training. They actually start this September 19th and 20th. September 19th, and interestingly enough, just so you know sometimes what I do during a day, I'm actually going to go to Brookwood Elementary. And I will be the principal that day, because I'm sending the principal, who's new, Jessie Weisbrod. She and her assistant are both going together as a team, and I'll be the principal that day. Why? It's my job. And I would rather take on the mantle of being principal that day while they go learn so that they can be better instructional leaders. Literacy program is going to be fully implemented. Literacy collaborative coaches at every elementary, and that comes from our Title I funds. Even though we received a $650,000 cut, which is exceptionally significant, our board still has approved us moving forward because of the results that we're seeing. And I am results driven. And then we have other things that we've implemented for this year at the secondary level with Read 180 to capture those students that are behind. Mathematics, we have a completely new program, Envisions and Connected Math, K through 12. We also have hired just a phenomenal coach that we went up to go see at, thank heavens, George, cover your ears for a second, the first word is not appropriate, Michigan University, okay? By the way, my tech director came from that other school up north. That's why we're having problems. We've completely reorganized the secondary schedule. We have a web-based approach to get kids caught up at math at the secondary level as well that is individualistic. And then obviously we've also opened up the Miami School for students that learn differently. ESL. Oh, what is it? It is approximately 11% of our kids, which is about 1,100 students, are ESL, English second language. They come to us not only behind in their language skills, but in some cases, you have to remember, in some cases cognitively too. So it's kind of a double whammy. Those same kids on our report card, when they do the disaggregated data, will count multiple times for us or against us. Because if they're also in poverty, each one of those check marks is a score on that report card. So we knew that we had to do something with that population, so we reorganized our staffing. Sometimes you have to look at the resources that the community is blessed you with and make sure you're using those properly. Immersion of language. We expect our students to learn in an environment where basically only English is spoken, so that they have to embrace that. In some cases, though, obviously we still have the bilingual texts, but we're trying to do all we can for that. And we've implemented summer camps so that they don't fall behind over the summer because of retention, because you don't always retain the information you've learned. Mental health. We do have some challenges in our community. And one of the things we surveyed our staff, and they said, Tony, please help our students with mental health needs, because we can't teach unless we have great discipline, which we have to have. And I've said, I want us to be firm and fair. But as far as the mental health needs of our kids, what are we doing? We reached out to an organization called MindPeace. It's a nonprofit out of Cincinnati that helped us organize all of the providers that were meeting with our students. We had over 22 organizations. The problem was I might have a mental health provider come over to Sonia today, but tomorrow it was, I know, typecasting. But tomorrow it'd be someone else. And the problem was that person also wasn't communicating with the school so that we knew how to help the student the best. And what we've done is we have organized this so that there's a level of accountability from our providers so that we have that good communication that the teachers were asking for. School-based health center, you're aware that we opened that. We had the ribbon cutting and everything else. This is another service that we provide that we should celebrate as a part of. It's not on a report card. None of these things are on a report card. But these are things that we should celebrate in our community. We've had almost 2,000 medical visits, over 300 dental visits, over 300 vision exams, 180 pairs of eyeglasses have been given, and over 600 behavioral or mental health visits. This is significant. These are folks that did not have access to care. So when I look at self and all the good that you guys do, Butler County United Way, we're in this together. And these are great things we're accomplishing. Our food truck. We know that we have a high rate of students on free and reduced lunch. During the school year, we feed them breakfast and lunch. It's about 73% of our kids. But what do they do during spring break? What do they do at winter break, Christmas time? What do they do in summer? So we had this epiphany that we would have a food truck that would be available for after-school practice times for not only student athletes, fine arts programs, kids in general. And And this is an experiment we're trying, and then we're trying to come up with a schedule to do this during the breaks, including summer, working with our other providers like Lighthouse, etc. It is an exciting opportunity. Now, the one thing I asked that be installed in the food truck, and it really is neat, is we added Wi-Fi to it. Because there's some goofy English teacher who is your superintendent that believes, well, if kids are picking up a meal, what if they got on their Wi-Fi and actually read something? I know, okay. I can dream. So when I look at this, you need to know Alexa, and we've played this video before. Alexa lived at Gordon Smith, not too far from my house. She had her own set of challenges, but overcame those. And if you haven't seen this, I'd like to show it to you. As soon as the guy from the state up north hits that button.
My educational and life experiences at Hamilton City Schools instilled in me a deep ethic for hard work and a determination that, in the end, the fruits of my labor will benefit others. It all paid off on December 15th, 2015, when I got the acceptance letter from Yale University. You got it! Yay! No one in my immediate family had gone to college before, let alone had the chance to study at one of the nation's most prestigious research universities. I always wanted to be a scientist, to examine my environment, as well as to consider the processes and systems that make it function. That early dream of mine was made a reality in so many ways by the extraordinary teachers at Hamilton City Schools. Mr. Eaton, my AP Physics teacher, was just as extraordinary. He has such a passion for both teaching and learning. My AP English teacher, Miss Gill, greets her students every morning by saying, "Hello, beautiful people." It just lifts your spirit and makes you feel cared for, and that always made me want to work harder. It was their compassion and commitment that gave me the audacity to set my sights on Yale. And now, I have the unthinkable privilege of studying here. And that's why I'm Hamilton proud.
So the question is, are we headed in the right direction? At the end of our kickoff meeting, and I have the utmost respect for our high school principal, John Wilhelm. His dad is taken ill. He's with him right now. And John's dad's a great man, been an educator for years. John paid me probably one of the best compliments I've ever had in my career. I challenged John when I came here to do more, just like I did with anyone else. I had the day that we did the kickoff meeting, I had just a couple days prior to that double hernia surgery. And I was not at my best, but believe me, they said take 2 weeks off. I thought 2 days was enough. So I went, and John he sent me the following text, because immediately after this thing I went home. He said, "We had a great day today. I had a teacher who last year was at Eaton High School tell me that she loved the positive climate within our district. Sue Sapella from Miami Hamilton, who received the $1.3 million grant for Upward Bound, something that's going to help our kids get to college, attended the convocation and was impressed with the accomplishments of our district." And he says, this is all happening through your leadership and probably wouldn't have happened otherwise. That can be tough for some people, and here's my favorite part. That can be tough for some people. It was tough for me, uncomfortable too, he writes. But that's how we learn and grow. Thanks for stepping up and pushing us to improve. I do have high expectations as superintendent, and just like we do in our community. And I am truly excited to share with you what we're doing, and I am Hamilton proud. So I'll take any questions. Yes. Oh, thank you.
I know you're taking a lot of data. Are you taking data on the obstacles students are facing where no matter what, even if they get to school, they're hungry and they're witnessing domestic violence, they're going through tough times at home, but focusing on a state test is just not a priority?
Unfortunately, I don't have that luxury. I mean, I want to meet their needs, I mean, if they're hungry, I want to feed them. If they're sick, we purchased additional vans to transport them to the school-based health clinic. But at the end of the day, the state doesn't care if what their condition is. They expect them to pass this test. I can't lower my expectations below that, and I don't want to seem callous, because I do want to meet all their needs, love them and everything, but still I've got to say, got to pull yourself up. And that's what we do. Now then, does it work for everyone? We have about an 80% graduation rate. We have about a 30% transient rate. Are we going to capture them all? No. But do I want to be sensitive to their needs? Yes. But they still have to take the tests.
Have you thought about partnering more with the city then, or the new Hamilton initiative to take on some of those bigger?
I'm on the Workforce Development Initiative. I do all kinds of different committees that we've formed. We have a BAC, a Business Advisory Council. We look at any and every opportunity we have to figure out how to solve some of the challenges that our community faces. But still, we have to maintain high expectations. So, other questions? Yes, sir?
When you first started, you talked about 46 or 48% proficiency rate. Mm-hmm. Obviously, 100% would be great, but where would you expect that to be? I don't know.
Oh, that's a great question. Okay, so the state expects at least 80% of our students to be proficient or higher. I would like to get us there, but it is going to take that time. And I think probably one of the biggest challenges is that transient rate and also attendance with that population. Because if we're losing 30% of our kids rotating through a revolving door every year, that's a problem. I've got to have them in the class to teach them. And that's the biggest challenge, because then it looks like we're not doing our job in some cases, when in reality they're bouncing from here to New Miami to Fairfield and for different reasons. But again, you won't hear me use excuses. But that's just a fact. Yes, sir?
Through the years, we've had different things from No Child Left Behind, core curriculum, different types of testing. Is this testing that you're striving for, is this constantly in flux? Is it a moving target?
Okay, yes. And the example I'll give you, I just said we improved in 17 out of 23 areas. With a stroke of a pen, they've already eliminated 2 tests just randomly. We no longer have a 4th grade or 6th grade social studies test. This year alone, they changed the graduation requirements. Next year's class, the juniors, are going to be held currently to the same provision. Testing is subject to change anytime. The problem is, in your own business, I wish Dave Lippert were here, if all of a sudden he had to retool his entire manufacturing plant because somebody said, hey, next year you have to do this. Can you imagine the amount of money and time it would take? We're the same way. We just spent $1 million on math. And if they change it and say, no, we really want this taught here and this done this way, all of that money that we spent, time that we spend training, is somewhat for naught, because then you have to realign each time. But again, I've never wanted to be caught in a position where anyone can say, well, he's making excuses, because that's not it. But again, it is subject to change, and we have a gubernatorial race, and it could change again. So, and guess what? We pay for it as taxpayers. Congratulations. Okay. Anything else? Yes, sir?
You care to comment on your board members?
I'd say it is with great passion and pride that I enjoy each and every one of them in their own unique ways. There you go.
Nice question, Dave. Loaded question. We'll see you next week. Joshua's our speaker. Meeting adjourned.